I got a text from my kids, "Mom, you're not coming." A family vacation I paid for, yet I was cut out. In that instant, my heart shattered. A true story of love, greed, betrayal, and the family test that changed everything. A true story from Houston, Texas. My 3 sons uninvited me from a vacation I paid for, then secretly planned to sell my house. They thought I'd never find out. But I did, and instead of lashing out, I placed 3 keys on the table and told them, "Choose who you really are." My name is Margaret. I'm 62 years old, and this is my story, rooted in true events, real choices, and the lessons of dignity, betrayal, and forgiveness. The morning sun spilled through the sheer curtains, painting the polished oak floors with pale gold. I cradled my favorite teacup in my hands, letting the warmth seep into my fingers, and scrolled through my phone, a ritual I had held on to since Noah, Daniel, and Stephen moved out. It was my small window into their lives, a lifeline that reminded me I still mattered, even if only in a digital sense. And then it snapped. A group message from Noah blinked at me, simple and precise. "Mom, just letting you know we finalized the family vacation. We're keeping it small this year. You won't be joining us. Hope you understand." For a second, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe they sent the wrong message. Maybe I misread it. I scrolled back, searching for a smiley face, a line that softened the blow. Nothing, just finality in black and white. They weren't asking, they were telling. That's the cruelty of a text. No hesitation, no warmth, no love. Cold, efficient. Like crossing my name off a list, I read it again. Not joining us, saying it aloud, didn't make it untrue. My fingers tightened around the cup until I thought it might shatter. Months of planning, paying for every detail, imagining the trip as a bridge to bring us closer after their father Robert died, and I wasn't included. I set the cup down carefully, hearing the faint ring it left on the table, and closed my eyes. Memories poured in holidays past, laughter spilling around a crowded table, Robert teasing Daniel until he turned beet red, Stephen insisting on reading aloud during long drives. I remembered our evenings by the fireplace, plotting trips with Robert's meticulous attention, the smell of his pipe smoke lingering in the air. And yet, here I was, written out, invisible. My first instinct was anger. How dare they, after everything I've done, after all the love I've poured into them. The words I wanted to type back, sharp and cutting, hovered at the edge of my mind. I imagined a sting on Noah's face as he read them, the silent shame that might finally reach him. And maybe that's when I realized each of my sons carried different flaws, different hungers. Noah, my eldest, had always been practical, almost to a fault. He treated life like a ledger, measured, cold, and unforgiving when it came to emotions. Daniel, the middle one, carried charm but little patience. He could fill a room with laughter, but behind the smiles often hid a restless ambition, always wanting more than what he had. And Stephen, my youngest, was sensitive, my gentle soul. He followed his brother's lead too easily, eager to belong, yet often torn between love and loyalty. Each of those qualities, once small quirks of childhood, had once been my pride. I believed Noah's order would steady him, Daniel's charm would open doors, Stephen's kindness would make the world gentler. Now, those same traits threatened to push me out of the circle we once called family. Then came something heavier than anger, loneliness. The kind that presses into your chest and whispers that maybe they've all moved on without you. I walked slowly to the window and rested my hands on the sill, feeling the worn wood beneath my fingers. Outside, my garden was waking up, daffodils and tulips leaning toward the sunlight, bees buzzing lazily. It was early spring, and the world didn't seem to notice my hurt. The trees whispered in the breeze, birds darted across the sky, and life carried on as if nothing had changed. And then I heard my father's voice, soft and steady, echoing in my mind. "Dignity, Margaret, is the last inheritance you give yourself." I'd almost forgotten those words. He had said them one evening as we watched the sun sink below the hills near our house, his hand resting lightly on mine. At the time, they seemed quaint, like a philosophical aside to accompany our tea and conversation. Now, though, they felt like a lifeline. No exclusion, no slight, no careless decision could take that away from me. If you're still listening, stay with me, because this isn't just my story. It's for anyone who has ever trusted their family, only to feel betrayal where love should have been. I want to know, are you hearing this while sipping your morning coffee, or late at night when silence feels too heavy? If this story resonates with you, share it, comment, and subscribe. Let someone else feel its truth. Now, let me take you deeper into the choices I made when everything I believed about family began to fracture. That truth followed me as I wandered through the house, touching the objects that carried pieces of my family's lives. The mantle of framed photographs felt heavier than glass, every smile, each triumph, every moment staring back at me, reminding me of what I stood to lose. Even the smallest items, like Noah's chipped teacup or Daniel's old baseball glove, spoke volumes of the years I had spent raising them. And yet, invisibility gnawed at me. I could almost hear them behind closed doors, casually assuming I'd understand, that I'd accept being left out without protest. I imagined revenge for a moment, sharp words flying, their guilt mirrored in their eyes. But the thought felt hollow. Revenge wouldn't heal anything. It would only deepen the loneliness I already carried. I inhaled deeply, the scent of tea and spring flowers filling my senses, and I realized that my power lay in choosing how to respond. I could act with anger, or I could act with clarity and love. I sat back in my armchair, staring into the rising steam of my tea as if it could reveal a path forward. I pictured the family gathered in my living room. I would not accuse them. I would not scold. Instead, I would create a moment of revelation, a lesson in love, respect, and responsibility. I would craft something tangible, a gift that spoke not of money or material wealth, but of wisdom and dignity. The sunlight climbed higher, illuminating the dust motes dancing lazily in the air. A seed of clarity had taken root. The message from Noah had hurt deeply, but it would not define me. I would not allow it to. I would reclaim my agency, my voice, my dignity. I began to plan, not for punishment, but for enlightenment, something they would not forget. Walking through the sunlit rooms, I touched the piano, the bookshelves, the windowsills lined with mementos. Every corner was infused with care and devotion. I lingered at the doorway of Robert's study, inhaling the faint trace of his pipe tobacco that still seemed to cling to the air, as if he had only just stepped outside. By midday, the first sting of the morning's pain had softened. It had not vanished. How could it? But clarity had begun to shape itself. And then came the second blow. The mail had arrived. I shuffled absently through envelopes, bills, a magazine, an advertisement. And then, tucked between the folds, one letter caught my eye. The return address made my breath stop, a law firm. I opened it with trembling fingers. The words blurred at first, but as I steadied myself, the sentences grew sharp, cutting through me with each line. Confirmation of pending sale. Final paperwork to be reviewed once the heirs provide consent. My house. My Robert's house. The very roof under which I had raised those boys. They were selling it without me. The letter slipped from my fingers to the floor. For a long moment I couldn't breathe. The betrayal of the vacation exclusion was a wound. But this was amputation. They had not just pushed me aside, they had planned to erase me entirely. I pressed my hand to my chest, my heart beat wild, and whispered to myself, they erased me from the trip, and now from my own home. But they don't know who I am. In that moment, sorrow crystallized into something sharper, steadier. I would not beg, I would not collapse, I would not be erased. I had one lesson left to teach them. The next morning, I wandered the house without direction, sunlight drifting through the windows and the scent of coffee filling the air. Yet every step felt heavier, knowing my sons had cut me from the trip I paid for and had now tried to sell my house beneath me. I sipped from a cup I'd already refilled twice, its heat spreading through my hands and chest. The kitchen was quiet except for the soft hum of the coffee maker and the faint creak of the floorboards as I paced. Every item on the counter, every framed photograph on the walls, seemed to echo back my thoughts, as if the house itself were listening. I thought of Noah first. My practical, stubborn eldest, the one who had always approached life like a ledger, precise, measured, never wasting a moment. I remembered the way he had argued over the exact color of his bedroom walls when he was 13, insisting that every shade must match his bookshelves, and how I had acquiesced just to see him smile. He carried that same stubbornness now, I realized, but it was directed at the world and, perhaps unconsciously, toward me. Then there was Daniel, my middle child, graceful in his own confident way, determined, a king in his head and often in his posture too. He moved through life on a tide of ambition and self-assurance, rarely slowing down to notice the small moments that make a house a home. I thought of him as a boy, improvising monologues in the living room, hair flying, demanding applause at full volume. Even now, he carried that same energy, that same drive. I worried sometimes that his self-assurance blinded him to those who loved him most. Stephen, the youngest, came to mind last. My sweet, gentle Stephen, with his open heart and ready smile, so easily influenced by the others. I could still picture him trailing behind Noah on the soccer field, trying to keep up, always the last to finish, but always the first to cheer. His kindness was a blessing, but sometimes I wondered if he knew how to stand firm for himself. And as I thought of them, the wound of their choices pressed deeper. This wasn't just about a vacation I had paid for and been cut out of. It wasn't only about a letter that spoke of my house, Robert's house, being sold without me. It was about something heavier, the slow erasure of a mother by her own children. And yet, in that quiet morning, as I watched sunlight stretch across the oak floor, I realized none of this had been done with malice. They had not meant to hurt me, or perhaps they simply had not considered the weight of their exclusion. Still, the sting remained, sharp and persistent. The thought was satisfying in a dark, momentary way. It felt like justice. But as I lingered there, letting my eyes roam over the familiar furniture, the windowsills lined with potted herbs, the bookshelves bursting with well-thumbed volumes, I realized that revenge would not grant me peace. It would only deepen the hollow ache already pulsing in my chest. I closed my eyes and let them settle like a balm on my bruised spirit. Anger, I realized, was fleeting. Dignity, carefully chosen, could last a lifetime. It was mine to give myself, not theirs to take. Let me pause here just for a moment. If you've stayed with me this far, it means you feel the sting of this exclusion as deeply as I did. So tell me, if it were you, would you forgive or would you fight back? I'd love to hear your answer in the comments. And while you're here, hit like, tap subscribe, and share this with someone who believes family bonds should never be broken. Because the choice I made next would change everything. By midday, I had made my way through the living room, touching the objects that held fragments of our lives. I ran my fingers over the piano keys, remembering Noah pounding out the simplest of songs as a boy, his small fists drumming with unrestrained enthusiasm. As I traced my fingers along the edges of the frames, a new thought began to take shape. I would gather them, not for confrontation, not for recrimination, not even for lecture, but for revelation. I would turn their thoughtlessness into an opportunity for learning. Perhaps this was my chance to give them more than money or things. Perhaps I could give them understanding. I began preparing that afternoon. On my desk, I placed 3 small, ornate boxes, each holding a single brass key. Each one gleamed in the sunlight that filtered through the curtains. I labeled them carefully: the house, the savings, the memories. The first key, for the house, was more than a key to wood and brick. It was a key to the place where they had grown up, where laughter had echoed, where I had tended to them through every minor illness, every heartbreak, every success. They could enter, yes, but only with thoughtfulness, only with care. It was a test of their respect for the space that held the echoes of our shared lives. The second key, for the savings, was practical and yet more profound than it seemed. It did not open wealth, it opened debt. Inside that box I placed the final unpaid statement of Robert's old loan. The sum was still due, waiting after years of silence. Whoever opened it would inherit not money, but duty. It was a test not of greed, but of courage. Would they shoulder unfinished responsibility or turn away? This key would measure their maturity, their willingness to honor what their father could not complete. The third, the memory box, was my favorite. Letters, photographs, trinkets, diaries, tickets from concerts, souvenirs from trips, all chronicling a life of love, care, and connection. It was the most intimate inheritance I had, the story of us, told through objects and words. They could open it, but only if they understood that history must be treated with reverence, that the past carries lessons, and that memory itself is a fragile, precious thing. Arranging the keys on the desk, I felt a faint smile touch my lips. Let them see the doors, I whispered to myself, almost conspiratorially, but let them understand what it takes to walk through them. Yet the boxes were not only symbols. They were a compass. My father's voice returned to me with patient clarity. You can teach a lesson in anger, or you can set a compass. I chose the compass. North pointed not toward comfort, but toward character. I wanted the room to feel safe, but unavoidably serious. The truth would arrive without shouting, today. So I wrote small notes to tuck beneath each lid. For the house, carry, don't consume. Build, don't burn. For the savings, what you touch touches others. Unpaid debts live until someone honors them. For the memories, read slowly, return gently. Add your own. The ink bled a little where my hand shook, but the sentences held like quiet vows. I walked from room to room and chose one memory to represent each son. For Noah, I found the tiny plastic level he used to line his school photos perfectly on the bulletin board. For Daniel, I chose the theater ticket from his first lead role, the one he framed and then forgot. For Stephen, I chose the paper star he made for the top of the tree the year we could not afford a new one. I arranged them like constellations, only I knew how to read. I sat and rehearsed the meeting a dozen different ways. In one version, I confronted them with ledgers: who paid what, who owed what, who forgot what. In another, I locked the house and changed the codes. In yet another, I collapsed into tears and begged to be chosen. I thought of the day their father died, how we stood 3 across and 1 behind, like a small, uneven fence against the wind. Noah clenched his jaw so hard I feared he would crack a tooth. Daniel comforted everyone but himself. Stephen held my hand until our fingers went numb. Grief can braid people together. It can also fray them. Somewhere along the way, our strands had loosened. What I wanted, what I still wanted, was simple, a call that said, "We messed up. We want you there." But forgiveness is often born from the apology you will never receive. I breathed in, I breathed out, I chose to move anyway. By late afternoon, I dialed each of my sons and left the same message. Sunday, 3 o'clock. Come as you are. I did not explain, I did not accuse, I invited. And then, steadying my breath, I called again, this time to their wives. I told them the same thing, in the same tone. Finally, I messaged my grandchildren, little lights that they are, and said only that Nana had a surprise and there would be cookies warm from the oven. If the truth was to be revealed, it had to be witnessed by the whole family. After the calls, I stood at the window and watched the street shrug itself awake, people moving, a leash tugging, a child hopping over a crack for luck. The world reminded me that families do not simply happen. They are made, unmade, and remade in the daily work of choosing. The thought of that Sunday meeting kept my mind busy for the rest of the day. I imagined the reactions: Noah's initial incredulity, Daniel's composure slipping for just a moment, Stephen blinking in surprise. I adjusted the tone, the phrasing, the pauses, until the speech felt like it would flow naturally from my heart. I reminded myself this was not about punishment, it was about wisdom, it was about dignity. It was about teaching them that love and care require attention, mindfulness, and a willingness to honor the people who shape our lives. As the house grew still, I sat at my desk, looking at the 3 keys again. The brass gleamed softly in the lamplight. I felt a deep swell of pride. Here was my chance to teach, to guide, to offer them a piece of wisdom that could last longer than resentment, longer than any fleeting anger. But resolve is a fragile thing when the mind begins to replay the worst. I saw myself at the threshold of their adulthood, 3 doors, 3 faces. Noah's mouth a straight line that would not soften, Daniel's easy charm slick as oil, Stephen's smile apologizing for rooms he had not messed up. The film kept looping, my hands shaking, my voice wavering, my heart asking a question I already knew the answer to. Was I now a burden they had carefully budgeted out of their lives? It was not only the vacation, it was the arithmetic underneath it. The way someone had to press send, the way someone had drafted the words, the way all 3 had agreed that my presence cost more than my absence. The day they cut me from an itinerary I paid for, they taught me exactly where love ended and convenience began. So I wrote one more set of notes, this time for myself. On the back of a grocery receipt, what I will not do, I will not beg. I will not barter love for attendance. I will not measure my worth in guest counts. I will not repeat the story to hurt them. I will tell the truth to heal us. The list steadied my breath like a lighthouse steadies a storm-tossed boat. I lined a tray with cookies I would bake in the morning, cinnamon and vanilla drawing the children to the kitchen. I set out extra chairs, a circle wide enough for every voice. I brewed tea and set out honey. Love makes space, even when it expects to be ignored. In the quiet, I imagined the worst. Laughter, dismissal, the lesson twisted against me. I tasted the bitterness of that possible future and decided to sweeten it with courage. Night drew its shawl across the windows. I wrote one last sentence on a blank card and placed it beneath the memory box. If you open this, promise to add something that is not about money. Then I signed my name, not Mom, not Mother, but Margaret, not to erase the role, but to stand inside the person who held it. Sleep came in careful pieces. I dreamed of doors and hallways, of footsteps approaching and retreating, of keys that fit and keys that turned to dust. I woke before dawn with the feeling that something had already changed, though all that had changed was me. Sunday came. I baked the cookies and cracked the windows to let the scent travel down the walk. I placed water glasses on coasters and smoothed the blanket across the back of the couch where small shoulders like to tuck. I checked the boxes one more time. Under the house, I left only a plain ring, an empty circle, hollow as a broken promise. Under the savings, I placed the unpaid statement of Robert's old loan, the one still due, the one waiting for the son who would either rise to pay it or shrink from it. Under the memories, I slipped the true house papers, the title deed and a quiet addendum from the lawyer beneath letters and photographs where only careful hands would find them. Then I moved to the hallway mirror and studied the woman looking back. There were lines I had earned and lines I had survived. I straightened my shoulders and smoothed my hair and told the reflection the truth. You are not here to win. You are here to tell the truth with love. The betrayal of being cut from a trip was sharp. The betrayal of being cut from my own home was brutal. But what I feared most was that they no longer saw me at all. Would these keys remind them? Or would they walk away forever? Cars began to slow outside, doors closed, voices rose, then hushed, feet on the walkway. A child laughed, the sound skipping like a stone across a pond. The clock in the hall marked 3 with a calm, unhurried chime. The keys were on the table. The circle of chairs waited. The house held its breath. Sunday arrived with a gentle warmth, the kind only early spring sun could bring. It was not a birthday, not a holiday, not even an emergency. It was something heavier, something necessary. I had asked them to come without explanation, and that alone had stirred curiosity. Noah arrived first, punctual as ever, carrying the air of business-like detachment that made me proud and exasperated in equal measure. His wife, Claire, followed close behind, her lips pressed tight as though she already sensed a reckoning was coming. Their 2 children, Michael and Anna, stood silently, eyes darting around the familiar room. Daniel was next, breezing in with his usual charisma, his arm wrapped around Julia, who offered a nervous smile. Their teenage daughter, Lily, carried a phone in her hand, recording snippets of everything out of habit. Her younger brother, Caleb, clung to Julia's side, shy but watchful. Stephen arrived last, hesitating in the doorway, as though unsure he was welcome in his own mother's house. His wife, Emily, gave me a small, apologetic glance, and their little boy, Thomas, ran ahead, flopping onto the rug with carefree innocence. They all settled, exchanging polite greetings, but the tension lingered like smoke. Everyone could feel that today was different. I placed my hands on the edge of the coffee table, grounding myself in the smooth oak. I asked you here, I began, my voice steady but carrying the weight of months of silence, because there are things we must face, things that go beyond vacations, money, or schedules. The room stilled. Every pair of eyes followed me. There are doors in life, I continued, each leading to opportunity, to trust, to responsibility, and today I've decided to give you the keys. But before you choose, listen carefully. Each of these boxes carries a weight, a test. Not everything inside is treasure. Some things may bless you, some may burden you. What you reach for will reveal not only what you want, but who you are. I let my eyes pass over my sons. One box speaks of a house, a roof, a history, a foundation. But a house is more than walls. It is love or it is emptiness. Which will you choose? I continued. Another box speaks of savings, numbers on paper, the kind of wealth men chase. But money is never simple. It comes with debts, with duties, with consequences. Which will you choose? And the last box, I said softly, is memory, the stories, the moments, the inheritance of the heart. Priceless to those who value it, worthless to those who do not. Which will you choose? I folded my hands. Now choose. Eldest first, then middle, then the youngest. Let your choice speak louder than your words. Noah's jaw set like stone, his lips pressed into a thin line. Claire's fingers fidgeted in her lap, her eyes flicking toward him with unspoken urgency. At last, Noah stepped forward first. He placed his hand on the nearest lid, his face unreadable. Slowly, deliberately, I opened the house box with him. The click echoed louder than it should have. Inside lay a small, tarnished ring, empty, worthless, not the deed they expected. Noah frowned. "What is this?" His voice was sharp, defensive. Before I could answer, Claire spoke. "Noah, you said your mother had agreed." Her voice cracked. "Was that a lie?" Noah's jaw clenched, the muscles in his face tightening. I lifted the ring with care, holding it between my fingers. "This," I said, "is all the house box contains. Not walls, not land, not a deed. Just a symbol of how easily a home can feel empty if love and respect are missing." A silence so heavy it seemed to bow the ceiling followed. Then, from the rug, little Thomas piped up, "Grandma, if the house isn't yours, where will you live?" Noah's face turned pale. The question cut sharper than any adult accusation. Michael, Noah's own son, suddenly looked up at him. "Dad, why would you even try to sell Grandma's house? Didn't you know this is her home?" Noah's lips parted, but no words came. I let the silence hang before turning to Daniel. His hand hovered, then landed with casual bravado, though his knuckles whitened with pressure. The brass lid creaked open, revealing not stacks of cash or savings bonds, but a folded letter, yellowed at the edges. Daniel leaned forward, curiosity replacing his smirk. "What's that?" he asked, though his voice trembled. I unfolded the letter and slid it toward him. "Your father's unpaid loan, still due, still waiting after all these years. A burden none of you ever asked about, yet one that belongs to this family until someone chooses to honor it." His eyes widened. His wife Julia turned sharply toward him. "You told me your mother had no debts," she whispered, betrayal dripping from her tone. Daniel's charm faltered. He swallowed hard. I never wanted to face it. I thought if I ignored it, it would vanish. But it didn't." Caleb, his young son, tilted his head. "Dad, are you going to help Grandma now?" Daniel looked away, shame burning across his face. The paper sat between us like a test, its weight heavier than gold. Julia's eyes blazed. "You lied to me, not just about money, about who you are, and now your children see it too." Lily lowered her phone slowly, her voice quiet but cutting. "I wanted to record this for fun, but now I see it's just sad." Daniel shut his eyes, his shoulders caving under the weight of her words. Finally, Stephen rose, his steps hesitant. His fingers shook as they brushed the final lid. This one was heavier. It resisted for a moment before yielding with a soft snap. Inside lay a stack of letters, photographs, and, beneath them, a folded deed, crisp and official. Stephen gasped. "The house papers," but before he could reach, I placed my hand over them. "These," I said softly, "were never about possession. They are about memory, about legacy, about the truth of who we are, not what we own." Emily's voice broke. "She trusted you three, and you nearly betrayed her. And you, Stephen, you stayed quiet." The children's voices pressed the shame deeper than any accusation. Anna's voice came again, softer this time. "Why didn't you just ask Grandma before selling?" Her words carried a simple truth that cut deeper than any adult argument. My throat tightened, but I forced the words out. "I forgive you," I said, each syllable deliberate. "Not because you deserve it, but because I choose dignity over bitterness. I will not let your choices define my worth. But know this, love without respect is a house without walls. It collapses." The room cracked open with emotion. Noah spoke first, his voice low, his composure fractured. "I thought I was protecting us. I told myself it was just paperwork, just logistics. But I see now, I was erasing you." Claire's tears spilled as she turned on him. "You erased more than her, Noah. You erased me. You made me complicit." Daniel leaned forward, his usual confidence stripped away. I pushed for it. I said it was practical. I wanted control. I wanted the money. "And I see now. I traded love for convenience. I was selfish. I regret it." Julia's voice rose. "Regret isn't enough, Daniel. You always want more. And now your children know it." Stephen's voice trembled. I knew it wasn't right. When the message was sent, I wanted to stop it. But I stayed quiet. I failed you, Mom. And I'm sorry. Emily tightened her grip on his arm. And you failed yourself, Stephen. Stop hiding in their shadows. Stand on your own. For a long moment, the room was filled only with the quiet sobbing of wives and the wide-eyed stares of children. Then, one by one, my sons rose. Noah stepped forward first, his hand brushing mine before pulling me into a tight embrace. Claire joined, whispering, "I will not let him make that mistake again." Daniel followed, collapsing against my shoulder, his tears hot. Julia stood rigid, but finally said, "Then prove it, Daniel. Prove to her and to us all." Stephen came last, his arms wrapping around me with a gentleness that said more than words. Emily joined, whispering, "We will rebuild trust, Margaret. Together." And then, unexpectedly, it was the children who moved. Michael hugged me around the waist, whispering, "Grandma, don't cry. We'll always visit." Anna added, "We want you on the next vacation." Lily lowered her phone, whispering, "I'll delete this video. This is just for us." And Caleb, shy but brave, said, "Grandma, can I help in the garden next weekend?" I wept then, not from pain but from release. The sting of betrayal lifted, replaced by something brighter, a quiet joy. My lesson had taken root, not through anger, not through punishment, but through grace. We sat together for hours, the keys and boxes lying between us like altars. Sunlight shifted across the room. Questions came, not defensive but curious. They wanted to know more about the letters, the loan, the memories. For the first time in years they listened. Later, we carried tea and cookies to the veranda, the garden swaying in the breeze. Tulips nodded, birds sang, and for a moment I felt my father beside me. His words echoed in my heart. "Dignity is the last inheritance you give yourself." We spoke, really spoke. Daniel told a childhood story with flair, making the children laugh until they rolled on the grass. Noah recalled a camping trip gone wrong, and even Claire smiled. Stephen pulled out a faded photo, and Emily touched his arm with pride. I watched the transformation and knew my dignity, once clung to in solitude, had become a bridge. Not guarded, but shared. As the sun dipped low, I gathered them close. "You see," I said quietly, "dignity is the last inheritance you give yourself, and the first lesson you leave behind. These keys are more than metal. They are bridges between past and future, between betrayal and forgiveness, between greed and love." Night settled. They rose reluctantly, each pausing to offer gratitude, unpolished but sincere. I stayed on the veranda after they left, sipping the last of my tea. The quiet was no longer heavy, it was peaceful. I touched the memory box, then the keys, then pressed my hand to my chest, feeling the steady rhythm that reminded me I still had a choice, I still had a voice, I still had power. The day had begun with betrayal. It ended with a connection. The family had not been lost. The house had not been lost. And dignity was mine, untouchable, already a legacy begun. This was the keys to tomorrow. If you believe love is stronger than greed, share this story. Did this story touch you or make you reflect on the importance of family? Hit like, subscribe, and share your story in the comments. I read everyone because your story matters too. Together we remind the world love, not greed, is the true inheritance.